All right, picture this. You're standing in a minus 15 degrees Celsius squall off the Norwegian coast. The wind isn't just blowing, it feels solid. A physical wall of force pushing against you. Snow isn't gently falling, it's slicing sideways, sharp and stinging, hitting any exposed skin like 1,000 tiny needles. It's the kind of cold that finds its way into your bones. And you're wearing just 2 layers of fabric. That's it. No Gore-Tex, no high-tech down, no battery-heated gimmicks plugged into a power pack. Just simple linen against your skin and a layer of hand-woven wool on top. In this scenario, wrapped in hundreds of dollars of modern synthetics, you'd probably be counting the seconds until you could get back inside. But 10 minutes in, you're not just surviving, you're genuinely, comfortably warm. Give it another 10 minutes, and it's clear that your fancy, brightly colored ski jacket has just been completely outclassed by people who peaked 1,000 years ago. Let's be honest, your modern winter gear is amazing, until that one critical moment when it isn't. You've been sold this idea of a perfect, high-tech layering system. But think about it. Your synthetic base layers trap sweat like a plastic bag, leaving you clammy and chilled the second you stop moving. Your expensive down insulation, the one that feels like wearing a cloud, collapses into a useless, soggy mess the moment it gets properly wet. And your €600 outer shell. One little tear on a branch, one stray campfire spark, and it turns into a glorified, useless windsock. Its waterproof membrane compromised forever. The Vikings, on the other hand, faced brutal, relentless North Atlantic winters, not for a weekend ski trip, but for months on end. They endured endless sleet, ocean spray, and biting winds with no tumble dryers, no gear shops, and no warranties. Yet they didn't just survive, they thrived. They sailed, they farmed, they fought. How? They relied on just 2 fibers that could literally be grown in a field and sheared from a sheep. Their entire cold-weather kit weighed less than 2 kilos, doubled as their bedding on long voyages, and was durable enough to survive battles, shipwrecks, and even the occasional glacier crossing. You talk about versatile gear today, they were living it. Forget those complicated modern layering charts that have you juggling 3 or 4 different specialized garments. The Viking hack is brilliantly, elegantly simple, relying on just 2 materials: linen and wool, used in that exact order. But this isn't just a random combination. This is a precisely engineered 2-part system where each fiber performs a specific, critical job that the other cannot. Modern synthetics still struggle to replicate the perfect synergy these 2 natural materials create. So what is the secret? How do these simple textiles, one from a plant and one from an animal, work together to create a personal microclimate that can defeat a North Atlantic blizzard? The answer lies in how they master 2 fundamental forces of nature: moisture and air. The foundation of this entire system was the base layer, a garment the Vikings called a serk or skirta. This was not your modern skin-tight thermal. Instead, imagine a roomy, knee-length t-shirt, but cut from a durable, medium-weight, undyed linen. The color was typically an off-white or natural beige, the color of the flax plant it came from. These weren't just simple tubes of fabric. They often featured a lace-up neck, a brilliantly simple piece of thermal regulation. You could open it wide to vent a blast of heat after rowing hard or swinging an axe, or cinch it tight to stop precious warm air from chimneying out and escaping. Its length was also a key design feature. Being knee-length, it tucked securely under the woolen trousers and belt, creating a complete seal against any sneaky drafts that might try to creep in from below. The weave of the linen itself was a perfect balance, just loose enough to be incredibly breathable, letting water vapor escape, but tight enough that sparks from a fire wouldn't instantly burn through it. And maybe the most impressive part: you could wash it in a frigid stream, wring it out, and thanks to linen's rapid drying properties, it would be dry by morning. But keeping your skin dry is only the first half of the battle. A dry but cold body will still freeze. So how did they trap that precious body heat and create a furnace-like effect? That was the job of layer 2. Over the moisture-wicking linen serk went the engine of the system, a simple wool tunic. These weren't the tailored, form-fitting masterpieces seen in movies. True Viking garments were born from practicality. They were often constructed from simple rectangles and triangles of fabric. stitched together with sturdy running stitches. This method was incredibly efficient, ensuring that almost no precious, hand-woven fabric went to waste. The design itself was subtly brilliant. The sleeves tapered down to the wrist, fitting snugly to lock in heat at the crucial pulse points, preventing warmth from escaping. To allow for a full range of motion, clever square-shaped gussets were sewn under the armpits. This simple addition meant you could swing an axe, haul on a rope, or row for hours without the fear of ripping a critical seam. The wool itself was typically a sturdy twill, weighing around 400 grams per meter, and often it wasn't heavily processed. This meant it was still coated with its natural lanolin, the waxy grease from the sheep's skin. This lanolin is nature's waterproofing. Light rain and sea spray would simply bead up and roll right off. One of these tunics offered the insulation of a modern fleece, combined with the wind resistance of a wind shirt. But with added benefits modern gear doesn't have. It would self-extinguish if an ember landed on it, and it smelled of sheep and wood smoke, not petroleum. So now we have the two pieces of the puzzle, a linen layer to manage sweat and a wool layer to insulate. But how do they combine to become something greater than the sum of their parts? This is where the true genius of the system is revealed. Here's how the system works in perfect harmony. The linen cirque, acting like a wick, is constantly pulling moisture vapor away from your skin. But where does that moisture go? It gets transported directly into the wool tunic. This is where the magic trick happens. Wool can absorb up to 30% of its own weight in moisture into its core fibers without feeling wet or clammy on the surface. As it absorbs this vapor, a chemical reaction called heat absorption actually releases a small but noticeable amount of heat. So in a way, your own sweat is literally helping to warm you up. Even if the wool gets completely soaked by rain or ocean spray, its crimped fibers don't collapse like down. They retain their structure and those millions of air pockets, meaning the wool can still keep a significant portion of its insulating power. This two-stage system, linen wicking, wool absorbing and insulating, creates a self-regulating microclimate that keeps you dry and warm across a huge range of temperatures and conditions. For the truly brutal days when the North Atlantic decided to throw its worst at them, the Vikings added a final layer, a cloak. But this wasn't just an accessory, it was a genuine multi-tool. This was a large rectangle of thick, fulled wool or a shaggy, heavy sheepskin simply pinned at the shoulder with a decorative brooch to keep the sword arm free. This single item was their storm shelter. Pulled tight, it was an impenetrable barrier against wind and snow. But its function didn't stop there. When they made camp, it could be swept off for an instant, warm blanket. Laid on the damp ground, it became an insulated ground sheet. In a desperate situation on a small boat, it could even be rigged as an impromptu sail. This one piece of gear served a dozen purposes. Ultralight backpackers today obsess over the grams-to-function ratio of their gear. The Vikings perfected it a millennium ago with a single piece of heavy wool. Take a moment to consider your typical modern alpine layering setup. You start with a polyester base layer to wick sweat. Then you add a fleece or a down-puffy jacket for insulation. Finally, you pull on a nylon hard shell to block wind and rain. That's 3 separate specialized jackets, 3 separate and often very high price tags, and 3 different materials that can fail. 1 leaky zipper, 1 delaminated membrane, 1 snagged seam, and your whole expensive system is compromised, leaving you cold and miserable. Now consider the Viking way. The linen cirque handles moisture better than polyester because it absorbs and releases vapor efficiently. The single wool tunic insulates even when soaked, a catastrophic failure for a down jacket, and blocks a surprising amount of wind on its own. Add the wool cloak, and you have a windproof and water-resistant shell that doesn't rely on fragile plastic membranes that can delaminate and fail after just a couple of seasons of hard use. The total cost to make this in today's money? Maybe €50 for the cloth and a weekend of simple hand sewing. The total weight? Probably less than your modern hiking boots. It's an argument for simplicity and durability that is very hard to refute. Your body is a furnace, constantly generating heat. The challenge in the cold is keeping that heat from escaping. You lose heat in 4 main ways: evaporation, convection, conduction, and radiation. The Viking system is a masterclass in tackling them all. First, evaporation. This is when sweat cools on your skin, stealing massive amounts of your body heat. The linen cirque almost completely stops this by pulling that moisture away from your skin and pushing it outward before it can cool your body down. Second, convection. This is heat loss from moving air, what you call wind chill. The dense, tightly woven wool of the tunic, with its millions of trapped air pockets, virtually eliminates this by creating a barrier of still air around your torso. Third, conduction, which is heat loss through direct contact. The natural crimp and loft of the wool fibers reduce the contact points with your body, slowing this process down. Finally, there's radiation, where your body just emits heat into the cold air. The dark, natural colors of the wool actually help absorb some radiant heat from the sun or a fire. Together, these two simple, natural materials effectively neutralize 3 of the 4 major ways you lose heat, without a single zipper, a strip of seam tape, or a battery. Add a roaring campfire, and the 4th is solved. Physics hasn't changed. Still not convinced this ancient tech can compete? Let's look at the evidence. Archaeologists in a Danish bog once pulled out the preserved body of a 10th century sailor, perfectly intact in his 2-layer kit of linen and wool. His body had decayed over 1,000 years, but his garments were almost perfectly preserved. Scientific analysis of the outer wool tunic even showed microscopic ice crystal damage on the fibers, meaning the man had stayed so warm that he was actively sweating into his clothes, even as he was dying in a freezing environment. More recently, reenactors in Sweden decided to put this to a real-world test. They duplicated the exact outfit, using historically accurate materials. They then sat for 4 hours on a block of drift ice in the dead of winter. Their core temperatures remained perfectly steady at a healthy 36.8 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, their colleagues in modern, triple-layer synthetic outfits began to shiver, with their core temperatures dropping to a hypothermic 35.4 degrees Celsius. The ancient system wasn't just as good, it was demonstrably better. The numbers simply don't lie. So the next time you're standing in a lift queue, shivering despite your expensive jacket, or forking out a small fortune for the next miracle fabric with a fancy brand name, this is a hack to remember. You don't have to go full Viking, but you can test the principle. Pick up 1 simple linen shirt and 1 good wool sweater. Wear them together on a cold day. And share in the comments how shockingly toasty you feel. For more forgotten tricks that completely outsmart modern gear, hit subscribe. History's gear closet is wide open, and winter is definitely coming. It really comes down to this: 2 layers, 2 natural fibers, 0 fuss. The Vikings didn't just raid monasteries, they solved the fundamental problems of thermodynamics using little more than farm animals and flax stalks. Their ancient clothing hack still works flawlessly today, because your physiology and the laws of physics haven't updated their firmware in the last 1,000 years. So beat the cold the old way. Your wallet, your overburdened gear bag, and your goosebumped skin will absolutely be thankful for it.